Hi, welcome to the 2020 virtual Austin Indie Fest Women in Film panel. This is the capstone event of our Women in Film Day, which is our Sunday. Sunday is dedicated to all women in film. That's women that are working behind the camera and expressing themselves in different ways, writing their stories, directing stories, whatever that might be. And so we are joined by Carrie Cates, Nikki Harlow, and Molly Vernon. So Carrie Cates has been on our panel before. Nikki Harlow is phoning in from LA, which is awesome. Yay, technology. And Vernon was actually our Best in Fest top award winner last year with her short film that she can explain to us more about in a bit. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Carrie Cates, as you said. I've been with you once before, which was really cool. Made a lot of really cool connections to the festival, so thank you for having me in the past. I'm a producer, casting director, content creator, and over the pandemic have become a podcast host. I predominantly work in horror, very low budget horror films. And so I'll plug the podcast. I'm one of the hosts of the Scary Movie List show, where we make a list every Friday of some specific thing for horror films. Last week we did a Friday the 13th, like full ranking of all of the films, which was nuts. And then we have an Instagram page that we keep up. But otherwise, yeah, I make a lot of horror short films. I've got a couple features that are in progress as development goes. And my latest feature film is now on Amazon Video. It released in October. So you can check out Intrusion Disconnected wherever you Amazon.
That's awesome. I do sometimes Amazon. I more and more all the time. It's crazy. Okay, Nick, introduce your.
Hi, I'm Nikki Harlow. I am a performer, writer, producer, born and raised LA. Did a little fun stint in New York for a while. I produced a documentary on the Immigration Center for Women and Children that we were awarded a grant a year ago. And so we donated it to that center, which pays for someone's legal services for obtaining, humanitarian visas and things like that. Right now I'm actually working on writing, producing a travel show. So that's fun. But I also really love horror. Big fan of horror here, but I definitely love to play in I kind of call it feminist fantasy is kind of my go-to right now of script writing. So I'm kind of playing with some scripts with that. And yeah, trying to figure out how to, get some things produced in this crazy time.
That sounds really cool. I like the feminist fantasy description. I think that's how photography is, like feminist fantasy. So
Yeah,
I love
the Love Witch is the kind of the main thing I think of that. Yeah. If you've ever seen that.
I guess I think of Charmed.
Charmed, yeah, definitely. I mean, anything that kind of plays with, supernatural or paranormal, and then kind of with that feminine touch to it, but also the messages coming through. Love it.
That's awesome. I love it. Molly, can you introduce yourself?
Well, I can, but gosh, I'm going to fan crush for a minute because I am also a huge horror buff. So I have found some new gal pals, I think. That I am, I guess, technically I'm a college professor, a mother, a grandmother, a wife. Have an English bulldog named Mac, and I'm the oldest in this group. I am 65 and ever young. Yes, that is me in the picture, and that's recent. And I write, I teach filmmaking. I love teaching the writing because I love developing with a group of other people. I'm working now on a project called The Dog and the Man, which is a sci-fi horror film that I am developing with horror novelist Bob Gunner. Let me just pitch him because he's awesome. and having a blast. I am also kind of home in the pandemic, I'm south of Houston, but I was fortunate enough to attend the festival last year on the last day, on the Women's Day, and probably, I guess, was more surprised that day than I have ever been in my life. And I think somewhere there's a video of that. My grandson was there, and he still tells that story. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, that's so cute. I remember it being like you were so surprised that you were like, no, like you didn't believe it. That is my memory.
That is correct. I'm like sitting in the back and you'd moved on past short. So I'm just kind of halfway listening to everything at that point. And literally my husband had to, elbow me and is like, Molly, you won. I'm like, won what? I was a little bit surprised at that one.
That's awesome. Yeah, that was a really fun day. I'm a little bit sad that we're not doing a real life event, but of course that's definitely for the best this year. Because we've got the cases bad. I know it's bad for Nikki in California, but it's I think it's now like the worst in Texas of any state. So
yeah, we're bad in Houston as well. It's bad over here. Yeah.
I'm so sorry to hear that. Okay, well, this is a good start. I'm having fun. So I want to dive into some, like, I guess more specifically feminist questions and talk about what was a time that you felt some type of discrimination in the film industry, or maybe you saw discrimination in the film industry.
Well, you want me to jump in on that one since I'm the old gal?
Go ahead.
Yeah, it is. I was, the majority of my life, I taught theater, and then when video came out, working with the old VHS cameras, created, film programs, because back in the day, what I had to do working on film was I worked most of my life as a first assistant director because I'm bossy, a unit production manager, with the features and the things that I have worked on like that. Having an opportunity to actually write and direct myself is relatively new for me. And I very much appreciate anyone who has given me the opportunity to do that recently, and they have all been men. So there has been a big upswing in things changing, because I really started in this industry in the 70s and have been discriminated against many times on set, even where people would not want to listen to me being in a position of authority as a first assistant director, because mostly they were men for a very long time.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that reminds me of a couple years ago on the panel, we had Ali Light, who is an Academy Award winning documentary director. And after winning an Academy Award as a younger woman, she later in retirement went on to do narrative work. And she relayed a story on the panel about how even working on the film that she had sent to us, this was just 2 years ago in 2018, that she had an AD that was a man that was saying, I don't know if that's really what you want to do. And in front of everyone, kind of questioning her decision-making. And it started to chip away at her confidence as a director until she got to a point where she was like, look, do you want to be my AD or not? Do you want to get out of here, or do you want to support me? And eventually it worked out, and it was a wonderful film to watch. I thought it was very interesting and beautiful. And I was so happy that she was able to complete it and submit it to us. But I thought, how weird that in 2018, we've got this case where a woman who literally won an Academy Award still felt like no one believed in her, or that her ideas were too far out or too, I guess, fanciful. So that was really surprising to me, but at the same time, not surprising, because I think I've seen enough instances of that myself. I certainly run into that if I am in a leadership role on set. I'm very small, and so people have a tendency to walk right by me until they hear my loud voice, and then like, oh, are you someone?
Oh, yes.
I'd rather not fight about it. So if there's anything anybody wants to add, that's awesome. And if not, I can go on to the next question, which is kind of similar, which is I think a lot of women have relayed stories about on this panel about feeling like if they make a problem, then there's sort of a problem child, and so they don't bring things to people's attention when they're uncomfortable with with a situation. And so I think that would be something that's really helpful to hear for women that are trying to get into film. How do you weigh advancing your career against what you feel like is unfairness or some type of discrimination, maybe towards yourself or even towards someone else?
Actually was just talking. So I work at Austin School of Film as well. That's like my full-time job is with Motion Media Arts Center. So I work with a lot of filmmakers like through the fiscal sponsorship program and then also my students. And I've been teaching a production management class virtually that just came to a conclusion last week. And one of the questions that one of my students had asked was, she's been doing some PA work, hit and miss, and of course, not a lot of work right now. So she's kind of trying to figure out like, what is my next move? What should I do? And, you know, honestly, I feel like a lot of times with that, it's like, okay, you should get yourself on set because once you're on set, other people are going to see that you're a hustler and you're going to like do the things. And that's, I think ultimately a big way that a lot of us women prove ourselves is on set. Like we get there, we get our foot in the door, and then we just work 10 times harder than everyone else, and there's no way for them to overlook it. But one of the concerns that she had was that she's like, I feel like I come across because I'm a woman, like I'm pestering them when I'm trying to like figure out what can I do? What can I like, you know, I'm here, I'm the PA, what can I be doing? And I was like, well, from a perspective of somebody higher up on the crew, I love those people. What I don't like are those people who hide and they just like, they're like, I'm just sitting here in craft services for whenever somebody comes and tells me something to do. I forget that person even exists and I never invite them back. So I think like as a woman, like we have to make a presence on our sets. We have to physically be there, very mentally be there, and be very present. And then just, I mean, again, that work is going to really show through, and people are going to start realizing and really highly respect you, I think, if you just are there and do the work 10 times better than everyone else.
Carrie, I think what you said about, you know, the fact that if they are on point, that they get hired again. For
Yeah.
me, that person who is there the earliest and stays with me till after taillights when I'm finishing up as a first AD always is hired again. And they are the ones that now work professionally in this business and that I send my students to. So yes, encourage, especially the women, to not be afraid to work with the gaffer, work with the, you know, work with any of those teams that are out. You do not have to go to craft services. You do not have to go to wardrobe or makeup or any of those departments. You can work in camera, you can work, you know, the gear, you can get out there and do that kind of thing. Encourage those women to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What impact do you think women can have in our greater film community? What are some of the ways that we can make a difference if we, you know, if we're experiencing some kind of issue, or even if it's just a lack of opportunity, COVID, whatever that is? How can women start to make an impact and make a difference in their film community?
I feel like just being able to like be there for each other and help each other with opportunities. I feel like I've been very lucky, and a lot of my opportunities have come from colleagues, like fellow female colleagues in film. And so I feel like my experience has been like a little different because I've worked with primarily other female filmmakers. So I feel like I've been lucky in that respect of like I haven't had to one-on-one deal with a lot of the issues of like sexism in film because it was like very female dominated on my sets. But I think, but like I do also recognize like I got those opportunities because of the people I knew who were like you know, they call me up because they're like, do you want to help me work on this? Like, even if it's something small, I'd be like, yeah, I'll be there on set. I'll help set up for the day. I'll help do makeup, hair and makeup on like random things people film, just stuff like that. I think it just being able to support each other is really what is going to make our careers really take off. And people remember that, you know, and it's all about working together and creating that community.
Yeah, there's somebody that I really look up to. This might be a question that's later, but there's somebody that I really have been looking up to, and I've watched her career, and I've like been, I guess, very thoughtful in the way that I do things because I want to be her when I grow up. But that's Kat Candler. I don't know if you guys are familiar with her work. She's one of the showrunners for Queen Sugar, but she's also done Hellion and like a bunch of really great like Austin films. So she's now in LA, and she would always take a lot of time to like provide mentorship to others. And I think that that's super important. Like, you know, once you've made a few films, like look back, because there are gonna be those girls that are behind you that you can bring along with you on your journey, and like allow them to really hype you up and you can hype them up back. And I think that because of the way she did things, the way that she like really brought up like the next gen as she was rising herself up, I think it really projected her forward a lot faster than what a lot of other filmmakers have, because she has like this support team of people who I mean, if she like called, I would instantly be like, I'm gonna drop everything and go work on her set like right away. And I think that there's definitely something about that it's beneficial for you and them.
I think it's interesting you mentioned her because she's still doing that. I taught the showrunner class last semester, and she will still get on video chat and talk to the students at Houston Community College still today. Go over how she developed Hellion and how she got her career started, and you have to applaud her for that. I agree.
Yeah, so again, I work at Austin School of Film. I actually teach the class she taught 5 or 10 years ago. I don't know how long it's been now. And so I'm like, oh man, I want to go that direction. And so just watching her and how she looks back, like she also came to the Austin Youth Film Festival and donated her time to like give like a keynote address to these kids. And it was powerful stuff.
That's so cool. I guess we'll have to let her know that she's being talked about in this. Like, we said some stuff.
We all love you.
Don't tell her if it's good or not. Just tell her we talked about it. She can watch it and figure it out.
There we go. Yeah.
Leave some mystery. Cool. Okay, I want to ask you guys about how you got started. I think that's helpful, especially since we have some teachers here, for people that are getting started. And I've had a lot of university and community college students asking me about stuff like that. So I think with more and more young women students in classes, I think that's really on the rise. At least for me, when even a couple of years ago, I graduated 2 years ago, and my classes were pretty much all guys, to be honest. It was actually really weird how it would be like me and one other girl that hated me if I was lucky. And it seems like even in like the last couple years, we've gotten more high school, community college, and university young women submissions. So thank you to the women on this panel that have contributed to that, because I think that is some of it for sure. That's a big part of it, is having women teachers that guide people, because certainly I, as a student, didn't know anything about film. So what was you guys' process in learning, well, what the heck is this film stuff and how do I get into it? The very first step.
Oh gosh, again, being the old gal, I'll start. I started in theater back in the day, because you didn't touch a 35 millimeter camera back then. I got to work on some sets early on with things that were shot in Houston and Austin and around Texas, and got on set. And that was my first experience with that. But I learned it old school, and that was on set before I ever went to school. And my experience through the years, though, is that we have gotten people into this business through every possible avenue you can think of. They're not all actors, they're not all models. And some of the most talented and creative people I know aren't pretty. So if you're a lady out there and you think I don't look like Julia Roberts or whoever's hot right now, that doesn't matter as an actor or working in a crew or any of those kinds of things. So just get out there and get on set, like we were saying earlier, as a production assistant or whatever you can, and start making those connections. Nikki mentioned a minute ago, a lot of her work comes from that networking experience and being out there. So mine goes back a long, long time. We'll see what the other ladies say.
Yeah, I kind of fell into filmmaking because I started out as an actor. And of course, one of the new things now is like you have to make your own content to get noticed these days. And so that's kind of how it started, was just like first just making reels with my friends in acting class, getting together and like just really doing it from the ground up though, together, like being each other's wardrobe and hair and makeup and writing the scripts together, and like finding one friend who was like, a camera person, but kind of also having to help do like the boom and all that. And then it kind of just kept going from there. Like I was like, oh, I'm really into this. And we would do like little 24-hour film festival pieces where we just kind of would throw all this stuff together like overnight. And it just kept going from there into writing my own shorts. And that was that was a learning experience, my very first short that I wrote, because we just went like totally on a limb and tried to do all the crew stuff ourselves, like the camera operating, all that. And it did not end up as a final piece to put out, but we learned a lot. It was great. It was a fun experience. And yeah, and then so from there, I just take classes in the things in the skill sets I want to learn, and I meet people in that. I feel like a lot of my classes right now are actually very women heavy. And maybe that's just like where I happen to be going and being drawn to, but like all my writing classes have been mostly women or, female identifying. And even, yeah, that's like something I've noticed for myself. I feel like I'm kind of like on this other side where there's this whole new area. And even some programs I've been in for producing and stuff, like Creative Visions, they do different programs, and they have a Women Excel program, if anyone's ever interested in looking into that. So they will give a budget of money they'll select, you submit to be a director for a piece, and they will give you like a small budget and help you produce it. And so I definitely feel like I'm kind of on the lucky side of like, they're helping women get into film and finding your way into that.
Yeah, I think I'm a little more, I'm a little mix of you, Nikki, and you, Devin, in that when I went to college, so this would have been, I'm going to date myself, 2005 to 2008-ish. I was very similar in that there was, I think it mainly was me and one other girl. She's now in LA. I don't even know what she's doing anymore. We didn't really even hang out, which is weird looking back. I was like, man, what a missed opportunity. We probably would have been friends. But yeah, our RTF program was entirely guys, which is ironic. I got along with most of them. I'm like kind of part of that little boys club. And I went to Indiana State, and about, I think we're up to almost 10 people from our graduating RTF class all moved to Austin within about 5 years of one another. And I think that was really like the big move for most of us, in that we stuck together. So we were able to continue making projects, and we kept continuing to grow together as a group. We all still make individual films. We still make projects with other filmmakers here in Austin. But like The Rink, for instance, which is my last short film that's been kind of making its circle around in festivals. It was made by Ronald Short, who I went to college with. My husband went to Indiana State in the RTF program. He's a horror director, so it's kind of a nice partnership in that he can direct and I basically get all the people, places, and things he needs to make it happen. So yeah, I think really like ultimately the thing that worked for us was that we created our own opportunities. And I like that this question is, how did you get started? Because I still feel like, even though I've been doing this pretty much full time for like 10 years now, I still don't feel like I'm started. Like, I think that there's still, I don't know, there are moments where I'll stop and look back and go, wow, I've made quite a body of work, but it's still not what I want it to be yet. And so, I don't know. I think that's an interesting thing to think about too, and that you might already be there. Take a moment and reflect on yourself.
The imposter syndrome is real.
It really is.
I was like, my imposter syndrome has imposter syndrome. I'm like, I'm not even achieved enough to have imposter syndrome. Like, is how I feel. And then I'm like, oh, this is like a cycle.
Yep.
I think
Does it ever end? Do we ever stop being?
Yeah, like, do we ever feel finally accomplished? Like,
No,
do I feel
no.
legit ever?
Never, because like I said, I'm 65, and but I no, you're never going to be happy with what you do. You keep growing, you keep learning.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah,
It also keeps life interesting.
I think it's probably good because I think that means that you're setting your sights on the next step, right? Like if you were just kind of looking back, like, oh, I did all this stuff, I'm finished, that'd be like stagnating. But I think that's I'm trying to think that that's the positive spin on it, is it means that you're looking at it, oh, well, I could do more. And
Yeah.
so that's probably good. I also experienced that. I'm like, is this started? Did I get, is this somewhere?
Is this it?
I think I'm in the same house. So did I do anything? I think especially since so much of what I do is digital. And I think we just become increasingly digital. And so then I think it is easy to feel like, well, did I actually accomplish anything? Like it's sitting on my hard drive, but no one knows it exists. So I think sometimes I struggle with that, where it's like it isn't as tangible as maybe your years past where you'd have physical film. So I think my next question is going to be, since we talked about getting started, let's continue our journey and talk about what are the steps that led you to where you are right now, and what are you doing right now?
Well, I'll hop in. Well, like I said, right now I'm writing and producing a travel show that we're starting to film the first week of December. And that is literally another example of, I knew someone who referred me to the producer and was like, hey, you might be interested in using her. And so, yeah, it's kind of like, luckily I'm doing more of like the writing side so that I get to kind of be at home. But it is, now that we're talking about filming coming up, like all the logistics of working around that, you know, how are we going to film this segment? Like what's like, you know, because of got to keep the masks on, but then you're kind of looking at it as like, I see people on Twitter who are uncomfortable if they don't see masks. I see people who are like, I don't want to see masks. I want my escapism. So I feel like just the current situation we're in, like even when it comes down to the filmmaking, it's making definitely getting creative is the priority, figuring out how to work around these things and what can make the show work and still be safe, and just even the logistics of getting things on their feet. It's been interesting.
Call me, I can help you with that.
Okay, great.
I guess steps that have gotten me kind of like propelled in a direction, hopefully it's the right one, we'll see, is I guess I've been in really good shape in that I've created like kind of a community around myself. And part of that was basically a migration from Indiana to Texas with a community, but then that community got bigger. And and then taking on the teaching job at Austin School of Film really put me in a situation where I'm basically teaching over and over and over how to make a film. And so I'm watching students make mistakes, and I'm watching, I see a lot of like easy plot holes you can accidentally write yourself into, or, you know, just these things that come up over and over and over, or, you know, those mistakes like forgetting to white balance your camera and that kind of thing. And by literally seeing my students do this over and over and over and continuing to just repeat these words over and over, I feel like I'm like picking up more and more of what I was taught, which sounds ridiculous, but it's like this back to basics thing. And it's kind of interesting in that, like, I will go like chunks of time where I don't shoot any of my own material, like I'll have a DP or whatever. But during the pandemic, I've been shooting a lot of my own content, like I've shot, edited, and editing's really much more my space, but shooting and even doing sound and things like completely solo. And it's really fun to kind of see how my work has grown, and how much better of a filmmaker I am now than I was a few years ago, the last time I would have shot something entirely by myself without a full crew. So I think that really just, I mean, practice definitely makes perfect. You got to keep creating stuff. You got to keep doing things. You got to keep reminding yourself of the rules, and then why you can break those rules. And I think, you know, it takes a lot of times before I think that light bulb goes off for some people, and maybe I'm one of them. But I think that we're all, I don't know, you got to just stick with it. There's a perseverance, I think, level there. So I think that's really what's gotten me moving in the right direction, in the same direction.
Can I add something to what you said, Carrie? Let's just
Yeah.
make sure that those people know those rules before they break those rules.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you have to know that it even exists for a reason. I love the people who are like, 180 degree, like, I'm breaking it. And it's like, why? That's not serving your story at all. It's actually really confusing.
Sounds edgy, Carrie. We're trying to make it edgy.
Uh-huh.
Oh, it's not edgy. Yeah, I think we bumped into a similar problem. We've been shooting a slasher film, which that was really scary for us to get the ball rolling on that, because we halted a lot of other productions that we'd had plans for. We just kind of said, this is not smart, this is not practical. And so we canceled a lot of stuff. And then it came around that this slasher film had been crowdfunded last fall, and there was actors flying in from LA that had already, you know, and I think other states as well, that had already had their tickets bought and everything was set. And it was kind of like, okay, well, this huge machine is moving forward. So how do we move forward safely? And that was pretty stressful at first. And I think because of that, like the very first couple days that the crew got to work, a lot of us were new to each other, and a lot of us were just kind of confused and freaked out and hadn't shot anything in a long time. And we kind of sucked at first, to be honest. We reshot a lot of the stuff that we had the very first couple days. We just sort of went back and looked at it, and we're like, oh, so we screwed it up. And we had to go back and redo it. And it made such a big difference to just have like a little bit of time to make mistakes and to get the ball rolling, I think, because we I think I'm agreeing with Carrie that it is sort of a practice thing, and you can become out of practice very quickly. And there's ways that things can just be, you know, so many hurdles can be stacked against you. You're shooting with masks, and you're distancing from each other, and you're doing all these things, and it's a slasher film, so it's at night, and it's spooky and all these things, and I don't know this person well yet, and I don't know this gear well yet. And yeah, I think it was one of those things where it's like we had to make those mistakes at first, and then after a while we started to make it look pretty badass.
Very cool.
So Nikki, can you tell me a little bit more about what you are up to currently? Because I think you mentioned some stuff that sounded really cool, and I feel like I haven't heard from you in a minute.
Yeah. So right now, this moment, I'm doing a travel show. We're still like gonna shop it around, but that's kind of been different. Like I've kind of just like randomly fallen into more like reality stuff, like in my like working career, and then on like my creative side, I'm like working on my own scripts. I have one that's kind of this like environmental feminist fantasy piece because that's like what I'm totally passionate about. So I've kind of been using quarantine to refine like my screenwriting skills and been taking a lot of classes in writing. And so that's been like a really fun thing to explore there. It's been like a very introspective quarantine time for me and like a little soul searching career wise and kind of seeing like what directions do I want to take, like what's going to be like the passion projects that I want to put out. But yeah, you know, and then quarantine also makes it a little hard to like put it into action, so it's been fun seeing how I can implement it into the real world.
Thank you. Carrie, Molly, you guys are both teachers, so how has that impacted you? Because I think every single teacher I know has been freaking out this year. So what are some ways that filmmaking has evolved and some things that have worked for you guys?
A lot of the things that you were just discussing about everybody having to work independently, they've had to kind of go back to that. We are open at HCC now where students can go in and check out equipment and they can meet offset and they are supposed to follow the policies, but when you're not there watching them, you know, I don't know. Like I said, these COVID compliance officers out on set are having a hard time making them work. So assuming that students are is a little bit frightening. So we've adjusted a lot of things. They're very long classes that we have where you're spending a couple of hours online with them. So you have to find all kinds of interesting ways to do things. And teaching writing classes, I was lucky, not teaching camera classes or, you know, anything in this semester. You are able to, you know, they put their script up, you know, in Zoom and everybody takes, you know, a turn reading, and then we can go back and you can actually edit, and that has worked a little bit. I, in past, have always hired the students that kind of like we were talking about earlier, or the ones that are going to work the hardest on what they're doing, not necessarily the most talented. Often the one that thinks they're the most talented is not the one that is going to come in and work the hardest for you. So kind of we're proud of what they are managing to get through. And I think students are handling it better than I think I would have at their age. The idea of thinking about being like 20 years old now and stuck at home with a video, it makes my head explode. It's tough for me to be still now. But it has not, like I said, it has not been horrible. It's been a decent experience teaching online. I don't know. Carrie, how about you?
Yeah, I don't envy you being over at ACC because I feel like you guys have a little less control over what goes online and what just stays on pause inevitably. Because they, you know, your students have to get all these classes for like a degree. So what's nice about Austin School of Film is I'm one of the directors as well. There's really 3 of us that like kind of make all the decisions around like what classes are going to go virtual, what's just going to stay on pause until we can be back in person. And so we've been very, very careful about what we take online. So right now it's really mainly like the production management because a lot of people are in pre-production, possibly forever.
We're all in development right now, exactly.
Yeah, we're developing 15 things because we can. The screenwriting class has gone online, and there's a podcasting class because that's become really, really a big thing for people to, you know, put their voice out in the universe lately, which I don't know, I think that's great. But yeah, I think it's interesting because there's positives and negatives. The positives are that I don't have to teach like a full out digital filmmaking, which is my 8-week course where students are like in crew format, creating projects. I would totally have to dismantle that class. It would never work online the way it was built. And it's lovely in person. It's something that I've been teaching for 9 years now, and it's just, it's a well-oiled machine. The films that come out of that class are always really great, and I'm very proud of it. Um, but that class, it would have to be completely different to be online. I would be probably teaching a lot of students because we provide all the gear. So I would have to be, and we won't be able to do that on a virtual class. So it would be a lot of like teaching people how to use their cell phone to get the best footage possible and how to utilize stock footage and those types of things to like really patch up the holes in what you're not going to be able to get or not be able to get well right now. So there's a lot of that, but with the classes or with production management that I am teaching, it's been really great because I get to teach students from all over the United States and they don't have to travel to me. So usually I'm teaching this class and I get students from like New Zealand and Russia and whatever, and they're here and they had to get a travel visa to come and they had to pay all this money. Whereas now it's like I've got a student who literally was unable to show up 2 weeks ago because the hurricane was hitting New Orleans and that's where she lives. But she's just like right in there with several students from LA and whatnot, and they're all just tuning in and really engaging. And I think that's really what's been making it work is that we're talking about specific projects that they're actively working on. Otherwise it would be like watching a YouTube video, and YouTube's great and all, but you just can't get like the full effect if you can't send the YouTuber your script and get notes back or build a budget and get like some feedback of like, does this seem feasible? Is this like realistic budget for this? Have I forgotten anything? Those kinds of things. So
Well,
I've been
the
really
perk
lucky.
that I the perk that I hear from students that are having to use those cell phones is they are talking their families into upgrading their phones. That is the only advantage so far, because our production classes have to move forward, and I would say it is not the best situation. It is not.
Yeah. It would make me sad, I think, if somebody had to take digital filmmaking from me the way that like online, just because I feel like they would be losing out on the most important part of a class experience, which is getting to work with other students so that you learn how to work on a crew. Because it's a disservice if like you get spit out and you're just like, okay, I can run a camera and run sound. I can do all these things, but I don't know anyone to make anything with. I don't know.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think it is kind of a loss. It's almost like you're saying, like I've taught myself a lot on YouTube, but then I've also had those times. It looks so easy in the YouTube tutorial, and I'm just struggling with it, and I'm just totally screwing it up, and I'm like, man, looked easy on YouTube. I swear, I thought I had it. So yeah, it's definitely not the same as the full effect. I want to ask you guys about a project for the virtual audience that you are proud of, because virtual audience doesn't know who you are. And I know a little bit about you guys, but I feel like I can always learn more. You're very interesting, surprising people. So let's go around in a circle and tell me a project that you worked on that you are super proud of and excited about. And my request for Molly would be to talk about Lillian a little bit, because I project and I've seen it.
Oh, you want me to start? Okay. I was just going to say I have a second project that's actually at the festival this year. Can I talk about it?
Absolutely.
Okay. It is Salting the Fly. And this was written by a friend of mine, and I produced and UPM'd and assistant directed, and then finally had to come in, my husband and I, and do the wardrobe and the costumes, but it was just a couple of actors in one location. But I think is a very, very nice piece about a subject that is near and dear to me, because I've worked with lots of autistic students in filmmaking through the years. So that's what Salting the Fly is about. And if you get an opportunity, it will screen tomorrow afternoon For the life of me now, I can't remember now. I know it's in the afternoon, 4 o'clock maybe.
That sounds right. I'll double check.
Okay.
And
Okay,
when
we
we
can check.
share the video, we'll add that to the social. And
Okay, we can check that schedule. And then of course Lillian, who I have had so many people now who enjoyed that story want me to write the feature version of it when I am knee deep in my little sci-fis and horror, but being a personal story to me, and I don't even really know if you knew that or not, that this is a story that was based on sort of a family legend about the land that has been in my family since 1836, and how it was my grandmother's grandmother, so it was actually my great grandmother. However, I used my grandmother's name, which was Lillian, in the telling of the story. But the idea that they saved at the very end of the Texas Revolution the children from families that had been murdered. And they were every race, every nationality. You know, there's Indians and Black kids and Hispanic kids and white. I mean, everything all mixed together that traveled, okay, with this great grandmother of mine and once they got to a particular point, they were trying to escape and go to Louisiana. And I think kind of went the wrong way, but they run into a runaway slave. And she tells him that, you know, Sam Houston has beaten them and you can go home now. And they don't turn in the runaway slave, they take her home. So it was a lot of fun to write a sort of short version of this happening. And but filming it, I don't know how many people are stupid enough to film outside in the end of July in Houston with 6 kids and a dog. Like we did.
And there's horses in Lillian, right? And
at one point, yes.
yeah, there's children and all the animals. And I remember like a cannon. There's weapons.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's got everything that seems crazy. I remember when we first saw it, Matt and I were talking about it, and he was like, "Well, see, it should be terrible." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he was like, It's got all these things. It's just how did anyone make this film?
Well, we shot it in 4 days, and that's kind of what people can't believe, because we could only work obviously out in the middle of nowhere from once the sun was up, and we could get all those kids out there. And then the favorite stories, of course, are the behind the scene ones. You know, in regard to the filming of that with those kids and that poor dog. As we went through that story, but it has done very, very well on the festival circuit, and you'll have chances in the future to see it again, because so many festivals got pushed back and are going virtual and those kinds of things. And once people started requesting that we send that kind of thing, it will be a little while before I can actually hand it on to the out to the public. But I have certainly been encouraged to write the feature, so when you see Lillian, son of Lillian, whatever, you know, that's what will happen with that. So don't
That would
shoot.
be awesome.
Yeah,
I love that film. That'd be awesome. I love the historical components of it. That's definitely on my like hot list of projects to work on, are historical projects. And I love things that are sort of like folklore, family history type stuff. That's so cool.
It was like I said, it was kind of an amazing thing to have gotten produced, and someone trusted Wee with the story and being able to get that out there. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well,
Carrie?
you sounds like a wild woman.
Well, how many times do we teach that, Carrie? Whatever you do, don't use, kids and dogs.
Yeah,
So I'm
kids
like,
or pets.
yeah.
Children, the whole film, I was like, wow, this is really good. And from like an audience perspective, I was like, this film is so awesome. And then from like a filmmaker perspective, I was like, this lady.
all the things they tell you never, ever, ever to use. That's amazing.
Yeah, we literally had to go out there in the morning and fog, and it was my DP, who's my business partner. We work under the Vernon McKee mantle, who would go out and fog everything before we can even unload and get over there to attempt to shoot.
Well,
crazy.
I think the question I'm like just so excited about this. So the question was, what project are we really excited about, or like we're really proud of?
Of just
Um,
like letting people know who you are.
yeah. So I guess with Intrusion Disconnected, that's kind of like our biggest project that we've put out, and wildly enough, we started on that film like 12 years ago, maybe 15 or something. There's actually pictures of me on set where my hair's like all the way down my back and then it's short, and then I had a bob, and then it grew all the way back out again in the time it took us to make this movie. But um it was a labor of love, and I think that a lot of filmmakers get into that situation where you think you have funding, you have everything put together, you shoot the first chunk, and then funding falls through. And so we essentially put that movie on pause for multiple years, and then came back, and we were very lucky to have a cast and crew that all managed to like not gain a bunch of weight or like change radically in appearance. I do feel bad for the lead girl because essentially she just had to keep her hair in the same hairstyle for years and years and years. um every time we filmed, we like, when you watch it, you'll notice the cell phones are they're like razors, like the little flip razor phone. So anytime we finished filming, everybody's shoes, their jewelry, their um phones, everything went in a big tub and it went into the attic somewhere in somebody's home. But that film was shot in Kentucky, and so we even managed to start filming on that before we moved to Texas, and we've been in Texas for 10 years now. So for it to just finally release, I'm very proud of that movie finally getting out into the universe and like not being. I edited that entire feature as well, so not like taking up space on my hard drive anymore, and it just being out for people to see, since I've been talking about that movie for my entire film career. Um, it was the first feature I started, but it's the last feature that I've put out, and I've put out 3 features in the meantime. So
Wow.
it's, yeah, I'll say I'm proud of that, but that's it was sort of like the boyhood of horror films, but it never should have been that way.
Don't feel bad, Carrie. We spent 9 years on a film called Dropa, which is actually out there now, and you can see it on multi-streaming, platforms. But ended up recasting the lead 3 times.
Yeah, I felt very validated last year. So last year we were still going through color correction and like getting post finished. And I was at a talk that Mark Duplass was giving, and he had said something along the lines of, if you're writing a script that you plan on acting in, write yourself 10 years older. And I was like, okay, I'm not the only person who's been working on the same film for 10 years.
Nope.
Keep looking good. You can do it.
Yeah. So Nikki, what do you got?
I'll let you guys know how it goes. That's my plan so far.
So my piece is from, this is like the piece that I would say where I felt like I was like, oh yeah, I am a filmmaker. This was like way back in my acting class, and we were, throwing things together, and we decided to hop into this little film festival. We were like, let's just throw something together, like everyone get in groups, let's do films, let's get seen. And one of my friends was like, I really want to go for like a Hallmark Christmas movie vibe. And so we threw together this script about 3 sisters reuniting like of their first Christmas after their mother died. And we just filmed it all in like one weekend at someone's apartment, and just we're like filming in the street. We just like went into grocery stores and filmed. Like it was like total like just on the fly, like indie filmmaking right there. And it was my first time directing it also, and I edited the whole thing. And this was like me totally doing this with like no previous experience, no training, like have since taken classes in it because I spent like days editing it. But and we ended up with this piece that I felt like I was like, wow, we really just kind of like made this organic story about, it's really about like sisters and family. And it kind of went against the usual things too of like they're all gonna end up married. Like that's not the way it went at all, even with like their relationships in it. And when we put it up in the film festival, we like aired it between all our classmates, and with all the videos that went up, our acting teacher was like, I feel he just praised the directing. So for me, I was like, oh my God, I feel like so validated. But I just felt like I was like, oh wow, like I was able to kind of just like lead this team through this whole production and put like my view of the story into it. And it was just my first time really putting anything together like that. And so to even have any like good feedback on it, I was like, okay, like I'm doing the right thing. I'm working it. And then, you know, from there, it kind of just blew up from there. Like that was like, I always think of that as kind of like, that was like my first piece. And so I just feel like that kind of was the catalyst into my producing filmmaking career.
Bravo, Nikki. Bravo.
Yeah, that's such a good story. That's awesome. I love it. Love it. I'll share. Last year, I made a small project, and it was so spontaneous. So I had just graduated from college, and I had no life plan. And like, yeah, I'll tell you guys the truth. I had no life plan, and I was visiting my parents in Hawaii because that's where my parents live, and it's beautiful. And I used to live in Hawaii, and so I knew where I was. And then I learned about that there was a contest that was about like rainforest partnership type of contest. Is they were partnering with South by, and they were gonna screen during South by if you were selected, and screen at the beautiful Long Center. And your film could just be a short film about the rainforest. It was sort of open to environmental topics. And I do not have a degree in that, but I have many years of experience living in Hawaii, and I knew the rainforest, I knew the plants, I knew the terrain, and I knew people that were real experts. So I interviewed like the world's leading expert on mushrooms in the area and other ecological scientific knowledge in specifically to the islands that I was on. And so once I had this brilliant professor giving me that information, then I took it and I made this short film that was like 99% drone footage, because I had just got a drone and I was like so excited to use my drone that it's and I could easily survey the land in a way that I wouldn't have been able to do with just me holding a camera. I could send a drone out and we could look at hundreds of feet at a time of the rainforest to illustrate what I was talking about. And so that film was something I made last year, and it got selected for that event, and it did screen at the Long Center during South by and all that stuff, and it won an award. And I was super happy that worked out, because it was a thing. Thank you, Carrie. It was a thing where I learned about it and made it in like 2 weeks. It was while I was visiting my parents, while I was essentially on vacation. And yeah, if I hadn't have leapt for it and learned, oh, hey, there's this thing, and had just gone for it in a matter of like a couple weeks, then I wouldn't have had that great experience. It sort of took like diving head first into it, and it really worked out for me. So I would like to finish the panel with a closing piece of advice, since now it's dark for me. So just think of something that you wish you knew when you were starting out, or that you had to learn the hard way, that you'd like to pass on to people.
You will lose jobs. If you power on through as a female, you will lose jobs if you are aggressive, and it's okay. Keep going, power through. That's my advice.
That's awesome. Thank you.
I guess I'll go. No one's gonna just give you an opportunity in this industry. No one's just gonna be like, oh, you look like someone who would do this thing. You have to get out of your house. You have to go put yourself in those situations to network, to meet people. You have to get yourself on set. No one's going to just hand it to you. It's not going to be like, I guess I feel like in college they just are like, oh yeah, you just go and apply for jobs. And that's just not how this industry works. You don't just go on Indeed and like look it up and be like, oh, good. It's the stuff that you're doing in college to like, or school or whatever, you're networking, those people you're meeting. And if you find that after school you really don't have a plan and there is nothing going on, you make it happen. You write the script
So
and then you
true.
start recruiting the people and you make the art happen. That's the only way it's going to happen. So that would be my piece of advice that I wish I could have given myself back in 2008.
I think I would tell myself perfection is unattainable. Like, stop waiting until you think you have like exactly the perfect script or exactly the perfect vision, or you have the exact perfect setup of, you know, equipment and crew and whatever to make it. Like, you just got to make it, you know, things happen. I loved watching, like, if you guys have watched the documentary on like the making of Star Wars, like they talk about how it's like literally it was just like a disaster the whole time and ended up being amazing. But I, you know, and like, and things will fall through like all the time, and you just got to get like a thick skin about it and just, you know, keep looking for the next thing. Then like it's better to have a lot of projects on the back burner that you have ready to go than putting all the eggs in one basket and then feeling like totally upset and discouraged when something falls through. Like, it's just like, it just happens. It's just the business.
That's such a good point. You brought up the Star Wars thing. And when I watched the making of Star Wars, I was a Star Wars fan since I was a little kid. And then like I was one of those like dress up, actually have lightsabers, beat your friends with them kids. That was I was the real deal. And even during Halloween when I was like 5, I absolutely had to be Padme, even though I had a fever. I was like really sick and miserable, and I didn't care. I just kept doing like Halloween, like, which is obviously bad. Like I probably gave so many people whatever I had. But I was just a super determined 5-year-old who was like, no, I'm doing Halloween. I had like the full Queen Amidala makeup and everything because I was that determined to dress up as a Star Wars character. Which that is so the spirit of Star Wars. Because then when I looked at the behind the scenes, like the making of stuff, as you said, I'd never really thought about it until I was a filmmaker and I was grown. And then I realized that a lot of credit should go to Mrs. Lucas, that she saved a lot of things and that I'd never heard that. It was like George Lucas is this genius and he's so awesome. And I thought it was just such a perfect instance of the like saying of behind every great man is like a great woman type of thing, where I was like, wait a second, Mrs. Lucas is a badass. And so that kind of got me, that was one of the early things that got my brain working on women in film and like in ways that women had been underrepresented or their achievements had gone unnoticed.
Totally.
So let me think. I think my closing piece of advice is to try all the things. I am the type of person that I love to do a lot of different things. And I have so much like weird existential anxiety about like, well, who am I? What type of person am I? What type of person do I want to be? And I think that the more you sit on your ass and like worry about that, the worse it gets sometimes. I think it's good to be reflective, but I think one of the best ways you can learn the type of person you are is to try something and screw it up. And then, you know, okay, well, I don't want to do that again. And so that has been something that I've finally embraced. I'm a painter and I've made a lot of bad paintings, and that doesn't mean I'm a bad painter. And I think that applies to a lot of things that we do. So now I've been, because of COVID, I've been out shooting a lot of photography because it's the type of thing that I can do at a distance. And it's been so fun because, it's been so much fun because I can just have that one person far away from me and feel safe and still be creative. And I shoot a lot of crap, but every once in a while it's something good. So I think it is a case of like just you've got to try all these different things before you strike it gold.
Yeah.
So thank you guys so much for being on my panel. I've had so much fun. I hope it was fun for you because I honestly, I wish I did this like every month because I just love it.
Well, you can join into the women in film and television activities that are online on Zoom.
Yeah.
Houston has them. Yes. I'm vice president, by the way. I left that out in my introduction.
Oh, you are the vice president of the Women in Film and Television for Houston?
That is correct.
Madam Vice President, I did not know that. And Nikki, you are also involved in the Women in Film and
Yes.
Television for
Um,
LA.
Yeah, I'm actually one of the mentees this year for their mentorship program out here in LA. So that's been really cool getting to link up with more fellow female filmmakers and getting advice. And it's kind of like this every other month. Sometimes we meet up more, but kind of like, honestly, kind of like this, just discussing our experiences and advice for each other and working on, how to pitch ourselves, what kind of career goals should we be making, things like that. So yeah, it's like
So it's out there. It's out there. Do
That's
it. Do it.
Yes.
Steve Austin, like last year created, we finally got a Women in Film and Television chapter here in Austin. Is that right? It's pretty new, I think. Carrie
It
probably
is,
knows.
it is new. I know it was just last year. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I went to like one thing and I paid my dues. And then I was gonna go to all these other things. And then now there's no things. So I need to
COVID.
tune into the virtual stuff.
Well, the president of it in Austin just had a baby last year, I think, and late in the year too. So there was like that, and then also the pandemic. So it's just kind of like we'll all come back again eventually.
It had a rough start. Yeah. Last year we had a number of I guess the cabinet members, like we had like I think the treasurer and a couple other people that were the new Women in Film and Television in Austin. So that was a fun panel last year. So we are getting the ball rolling here in Austin on that. But I think it's so cool that we are all part of that organization. I love it. Well, thank you guys. I will be editing this and posting it on BingeWave, which is our online platform. And also we'll trumpet it out to our social media stuff for Austin Indie Fest. And check out our festival. Molly's got stuff in it.
Mhm.
It's pretty fun. It's going to be all weekend. Friday, it's kicking off right now. And then Saturday is all day. And then Sunday is the Women in Film specific day. So that is going to be a crazy weekend, and then after that, I'm going to nap for like a week. Thank you
Thank you for
guys.
having us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you guys soon.